Greetings friends, well I apparently know nothing about winning games in 10th edition of 40k. Some people do, and we've got the best Blood Angels list from this weekend past. We're going to review it, we're going to talk in depth about the combos, the strategies, the tactics. So without further ado, let's get into it. So we're back, my friends. New edition, new army lists. Everything has changed apparently. This is going to influence the next list I play on the channel. This is a pretty crazy list. Well done to Jordan for going 4-1 when I can't even friggin' win a game of 10th edition yet. But yeah, we are looking at army lists. We're back. We're doing this. We'll continue to cover tournament winning lists or high placing lists. As we see where the Blood Angels shake out. So let's get right into it. Let's look at this first list. And I guess the one caveat about looking at army lists now is that we actually don't know what's attaching to what squad. So in some cases we probably have to guess, but I think in this list there's only like we can educatedly guess all the matchups between the characters and the squads, because there's only one option, right? I guess if Games Workshop ever relax some of these options, then it might become a bit more difficult. So, on this list, we start with the Captain of the Jump Pack. Infernal Pistol, Relic Weapon, Artificer Armor. Artificer Armor gives this Captain a 2-up save and a 5-up Feel No Pain. So, he doesn't have the shield, so just 5 wounds. What a Captain gets if you attach this to a unit, and this Captain will be attached to a unit, he will be attached to one of the units of Assault Marines. What a Captain gives the unit of Assault Marines is +1 to their strength when they're charged, and they can use a strat on them for 0 CP. You can do that from one Captain every battle round. So you could heroically intervene, you could use Honor of the Chapter. It's worth noting this is a Gladiators Task Force list. So actually the best list this week, in terms of all Blood Angels tournament games, Gladiators actually outperformed Sons of Sanguinius. So this is what we're looking at. This is Gladiators. It's hard to say that Gladiators is bad. Like, Gladiators just flat out isn't bad. When I did the poll on the channel a week back, we had about 1,000 votes, and people thought Sons of Sanguinius was slightly ahead. Like 52% of people voted that Sons was the more preferred way to play Blood Angels. But as it stands at tournaments, Gladiators is performing better. So we have this Captain, 2-up save, 5-up Feel No Pain, Infernal Pistol, Relic Weapon. He's attached to a squad of Assault Intercessors. When this unit makes a charge, then, because it's Assault, I said Assault Intercessor, sorry, Assault Squad. When this Assault Squad makes a charge, then you can do mortal wounds. They have the Hammer of Wrath special ability, which means for every model that ends with an engagement range, you roll a 4-up. Every 4-up is 1 mortal wound. There's also going to be a Sanguinary Priest attached to this unit as well. So the Captain, the Sanguinary Priest, 10 Assault Squads, or 10-man Assault Squad. I don't know which way. Like, there's a difference between the Assault Squads. One has basically like 1 Plasma Pistol and Thunderhammer and the Sergeant, 2 Flamers, 2 Eviscerators, 5 Bolt Pistol and Chainsaw. The difference, the only difference is the other squad is 2 Meltaguns, 2 Eviscerators, 5 Bolt Pistols and Chainsaws. So I don't know which one this is attached to, but regardless, you've got 12 guys going in. Whenever you finish a charge move, everyone engagement range, roll a 4-up. That's going to be mortal wounds. The Assault Squad that are paired with the Captain, they're going to be Strength 5. So I guess if you use Honor of the Chapter to give them basically Lance, then you basically get, you know, +1 to wound on Strength 5, which isn't too bad. I guess that means against like some armor you will wound on 4s. I guess Toughness 10 and less armor you'll wound on 4s. It's worth also noting that by having the Sanguinary Priest, you're going to get an extra point of AP. If you do play Honor of the Chapter, you're going to get another extra point of AP. So potentially, like, the Sergeant's Relic Weapon will be -4, I think, at that point. The Sanguinary Priest Chainsword will be -3. Your Chainswords will also be -3. Eviscerators are -4, but I mean, that's fine. And then your Chainswords on the squad become -3. So there'll be Strength 5, +1 to wound, -3. You could do that for free if you use Honor of the Chapter, which is the Space Marine one that basically gives, or as the Gladiators, what do we call it? Gladiators and Stratagem that gives 1 AP, and also it gives +1 to wound. It gives Lance, which essentially means if you charge, you get +1 to wound. Okay, so that is one squad. The second squad, I guess, in this list is Lamartes plus 10 Death Company with Infernal Pistols and Power Fists. So, of course, I just finished doing like 10 guys with Thunderhammers. They need to go and sit on the shelf. I think 100% this is the best way to run Death Company now. The Infernal Pistols obviously were pretty good before, especially with their free. So Power Fists don't take the -1 to hit that's sort of baked into the Thunderhammer profile. You're still Strength 8, you're -2. Yes, you lose Devastating Wounds, but I think the -1 to hit baked in is actually pretty bad, because if you ever come up to an enemy that does make you -1 to hit, then your Thunderhammers suddenly hit on 5s and they become kind of useless. Even with full rerolls, hitting on 5s really destroys any damage output this unit can do. So I think Power Fists is probably the way to go. And Infernal Pistols are fine. I mean, with full rerolls to hit, the problem with Melta Pistols before was you barely ever hit. Well, you're going to hit a lot of the time now with those Melta Pistols. If you have a 10-man squad, you should, statistically, with full rerolls to hit, you should be able to basically make 8.8 hits out of 10. So the Infernal Pistols get a bunch of strength back added to them. I like the Infernal Pistols a lot. Plus, if you're playing Gladius, you also have the advantage that you can fall back, shoot, charge, so you never have to worry about like being stuck in combat. You know, if you're stuck in combat, normally the enemy would get to pick to fight first. That could be bad for you. Well, you just fall back 1 inch, shoot them, and then charge them. It's fine. Lamarta's doing some cool things as well. Lamarta is giving lethal hits for the Death Company, which in turn actually does not stack with the Devastating Wounds. So it's almost like if you take Lamartas, you can't really take Thunderhammers, right? Because lethal hits means you auto wound on 6s, then you're never going to roll a wound dice, so you're never going to potentially get those devastating wounds. So I think Power Fists and Infernal Pistols are just better, and Lamartas is also doing -1 damage, right? So like anytime damage is allocated to the Death Company, it's -1 damage. I was going to say, a lot of the times the Death Company get hit with more than 2 damage weapons, so it always feels a bit futile rolling those 6-up Feel No Pains, but I guess any time you get hit with 2 damage weapons, then this is going to suddenly come into its own, isn't it? That's going to cut out 50% of the damage right away. If you burst some 6s on your Feel No Pains, you could really take very little damage on the squad. So another advantage, I guess, is if you are leading the Death Company with Lamartas, then you obviously get his weapon, which is fine, you know, it's just 5 attacks. Strength 6 -2/2, he'll have lethal hits on that as well. And you'll get both the reroll charges from the Death Company, which Lamartas used to have, so you kind of get to keep the reroll charges. And obviously the Death Company can fall back and can have objective control because they're led by Lamartas. So he is quite a bit expensive compared to a regular chaplain. A regular chaplain being with jump back being like 85 points, so it's like 50 points more. So regular chaplain's going to give you +1 to wound. Lamartas is going to give you -1 damage and lethal hits. Now I'll do a video in the future where I compare +1 to wound to lethal hits, but this is fine. I think Lamartas with 10 with this loadout is pretty cool. We then have the Primaris Apothecary with Bolter Discipline. There's one unit he's going to attach to, of course, and that is going to be the Desolation Squad. And that is one of the strongest combos that we have right now for Space Marines. I wonder how we're going to... I wonder if Gladius is still going to be as strong when this gets nerfed, because if it's not nerfed by the... I'd imagine it's nerfed by the time I release this video. I'm filming this on a Tuesday night. I'm going to edit it through the week and get it out for Friday. So, rumour is that this might be nerfed this week. I guess we'll see. But what the Bolter Discipline does is it means that your Devastator squad with all those crack missiles and all that indirect fire burst additional hits on 6s, because the Apothecary brings basically sustained hits to them, and then they can get critical hits on 5s if they're in Devastator Doctrine. So basically what that means is they burst additional hits on 5s and 6s. So if you use this on an Oath of Moment target, this squad for 320 points will do an absolute ton of work. I think it's going to get nerfed a bit, but I think there's still play around the Desolation Marines. Maybe Desolation Marines will be able to be used in conjunction with the Librarian Dreadnought, but in this list, I guess they're sitting on a building somewhere, shooting out an enormous amount of indirect fire, and then like basically 9 super crack missiles, which are strength 10, -2, d6 +1. The fourth squad I was going to say, it feels like we've talked a lot, but we're only on 4 squads. The 4th squad is Dante, who is the Warlord. So he's giving +1 to hit, +1 to charge. And then anything that ends in anything that fights with an engagement range, or within 6 inches of him, sorry, has to do a battle shock test at the start of the fight phase. I haven't actually found that useful. I guess if the enemy were really trying to buff up a unit, but the thing is, battle shock to me feels a lot like leadership. It's not super relevant for most of the game. You maybe only battle shock like 1 in 3, maybe less, 1 in 4. So I'm not entirely sure that I feel like Dante's take a battle shock test in the fight phase is all that useful. He'll also be attached to the other 10-man squad of Assault Marines. I don't know which one squad that is, but I guess and then they'll also have the Priest in there as well. So this time, they'll only be on strength 4 because Dante doesn't give any additional strength. They'll be hitting on 2 so because Dante does give +1 to hit. They'll still get their multiple wounds when they charge. They've still got some Eviscerators. They've got some Meltagons. And they got the Priest for the additional AP. So the Chainswords are still strength 4 -2. It is a bunch of Chainsword attacks, right? Like, you do get a good amount of Chainsword attacks out of that Assault Squad with Jump Pack. And, I mean, you get a good amount with... in the Gladiator detachment, you get even more if you'd gone Sons of Sanguinius. But yes, let's have a look. I think it's 4 base. So yeah, every model would get 4 attacks. I guess in this case they'd hit on 2. So I mean that's 40 Chainswords. They're -2 by default, or because you've got the Sanguinary Priest attached in there. And yeah, some other weapons in there. Thunderhammer. A couple of Meltagons. I think he's actually missing a free as start a shield here, because if you actually read the profile, it's a little bit silly. The Sergeant can have he can have the Thunderhammer. The Sergeant can have his bolt pistol replaced with the plasma pistol, but the Sergeant can also just take in a starter shield. So he could have actually had a free storm shield or a starter shield in both of these squads, and that wasn't on the list. And this list was pulled to BCP. Big shout out to Chris Chance for grabbing it from BCP for me. I'm gonna, if anyone throughout this edition, right, Blood Angels lists are gonna win tournaments. I like to cover them. I like to break them down. I like to talk to them so we can learn about them. I can learn about them, and then we can hopefully hone in on any like trends or anything like that. So if you ever are on BCP or something and you see a Blood Angels list that wins an event, then please take the 2 minutes it would take you to find it and send it to me, because I'm always busy with my kids on the weekend. I prioritize spending my time on the weekends with the kids. I work on the YouTube channel basically Monday through Friday nights. So sometimes I miss armies that did well at the weekend. So if you ever see them, send them my way. Discord me. You can DM me on there. I'd really appreciate it. Okay. We also have a Battle Predator in this list with the Flamers, and I ran a Battle Predator with the Flamers this week. It's going to be very good against infantry. It's also going to be very good for Overwatch, right? Because its main cannon is like D6 +3, strength 6, -2 damage. It's got 2 heavy Flamers on there. It's worth noting that the main cannon's 18 inches, and that if you advance, you can still shoot all its Flamers. If at infantry, that's the caveat of the Battle Predator now. Let me just read that so I'm 100%, but because I have been making a few mistakes. You can reroll advances. I forgot to do that. Yeah, you can actually reroll advance, and I think I actually spent a CP in my game against demons to reroll advance. Each time this model advances until the end of the turn, ranged weapons that have equipped by this model have the assault ability, but they can only target infantry units, so that's fine. So I think it's better to run it now with the Flamestorm cannon, be it 18 inches and a couple of heavy bolters, because it opens up, sorry, not heavy bolters, heavy Flamers, it opens up like a pretty good 1 CP Overwatch. I guess like a 1 CP Overwatch on average, you're probably going to average about 6 hits off that main cannon and 6 hits off the heavy Flamer. Now, against enemy infantry, that seems really good for 1 CP. Especially that main, both of them, I guess, ignore cover. So they'll just be the AP that's listed there, -2 and -1. So yeah, if you were fighting like toughness 4 infantry, you're going to make them make like 4 saves at -2 damage and about 4 saves at -1 damage. So yeah, It's got some other stuff on there. I suppose you can attach, like, what you can attach a Stormbolter, you can attach a Hunter Killer Missile. I mean, why would you not when they're free? But yeah, Ball Predator for 125 points. I think it's got some great play into infantry. If you end up in lists, you know, you end up fighting against knights lists and stuff like that. I'm not sure how useful it will be, but yeah, I think the Ball Predator has some play, and I think that the Flamers are probably the right way to go. I've covered all the characters, I've covered everything down to here, so then we just have one 3-man squad of Eradicators. They all just have Melta rifles. He could have had a multi-melta in there. I would have probably taken the multi-melta, the extra shot. You know, a melta rifle gives you 1 shot at 3 up, whereas the multi-melta would give you 2 shots at 4 up if you moved. So I think I'd probably be fine running the multi-melta with the Eradicators. You know what? I actually don't know if Eradicators kept assault on their guns. I'm very bad at spelling. Eradicators. They did not keep assault on their guns. So I think in this case, I would have probably just 100% taken a multi-melta in here because it was free, right? For every 3 models, 1 can take the multi-melta. Yeah, I mean, 2 shots on 4 up seems better than 1 shot on 3 up. Statistically, I think, yeah, statistically that is better. To a tune of maybe like 10%. So there's almost no point to do that. And I guess if you did stand still, then it would be possibly even better, because it would be 2 on 3 up as opposed to 1 on 2 up. Yeah, which statistically that's even better. So Eradicators with Melta rifles, I guess that's fine. And then Incursors, and there is something to be said about Incursors. And the thing that I like about Incursors is if you shoot a target, then everything else in your army that shoots that target until the end of the phase is going to get +1 to hit. That's from the multi-spectrum array. So after a shot, select enemy, all your Adeptus Astartes that shoot are going to get +1 to hit. Could be very useful for 10 Infernal Pistols. Could be very useful for Eradicators and or Desolation Marines. Getting +1 to hit on all those Desolation Marines would pretty much counteract the fact that if you might need to move them in a turn but you don't want to lose anything. So I think Incursors are really good. And then the mine can now be used offensively. It could never do that before. So basically at the start of any phase, when you're in 3 inches of an enemy, you roll a d6. On a 2 up it's d3 mortal wounds, but if it's a vehicle it's 2d3 mortal wounds. So Incursors have a bit of potential, like, vehicle sniping, I guess. They did lose Infiltrate. They just have a 6-inch pre-game move from Scouts now. Their Carbine are Assault and Ignore Cover, so they feel a little bit better, I think, the Carbine as well. They're a melee weapon. They lost an AP, but they get sustained hits 1, so they're not great in melee. But yeah, it's not horrific. They also have Smoke, which can basically make them pretty survivable, you know, become -1 to hit and also get cover wherever they are. So this comes in at exactly 2,000 points. And when you actually think about this list, right, and there's a couple of things I just want to say before we move on, is like, there's like 700 points of characters here. Like, this is 220 plus 80 is 300 plus these 2 is like another 270, so it's like 570. So it's like, and then 110, so like 680 in characters. That's insane. Like last edition, if people went much over 400 points in characters, I was like, oh god, what are you doing? You need to drop all your characters. So 680 on characters. That's like, that honestly I couldn't quite believe. Maybe I'm thinking that's where I'm going wrong with my list, because my lists have nowhere near 680 characters. I was trying to do what I was doing last edition, keep them around 350, 400 tops. When anyone sent me a list last edition where they broke like 500 points on characters, I was like, Jesus, get rid of some of your characters. So that's crazy. And then the other crazy thing, when you actually work this all out, right, the Assault Squad has 2 characters attached. This Assault Squad has 2 characters attached. The Death Company and Desolation both have a character attached. So that gives you basically, if you know, you've got your 30 Jump Marines and the 20 Assault and 10 Death Company, you've got your 10 Desolators, then you've got 3 Eradicators, 5 Incursors, and the Ball Predator, giving you actually only 7 different units on the battlefield. Yes, I suppose if, you know, if the Assault Marines all die, or the Death Company all die, and potentially some of the characters split off, you could actually end up the battle with more than 7, but it's actually just 7, which seems really low. You know, like, that's like a Knight player having 7. So it's really interesting to see that this was the list. This list by Jordan was the best Blood Angels list all weekend. 7 drops, 680 points in characters. I mean, like, I'm a little bit speechless, or I wouldn't say speechless, it's just not what I expected to do well. But maybe it means it gives me an idea of where I need to be building to get to a better place with my list. Because I think my last list had, you know, normal Blood Angels, like 12 units or something like that. These big units of 10 guys with characters or multiple characters attached is maybe the way to go. In a way, it would make sense, because that's the most benefit you get from your characters, because you have the most models attached to characters. Okay, let's talk some points and thoughts that I had on this list. So there's the 2 large jump pack units, mainly focused on close combat damage. That would be basically like your 2 assault intercessor units, or your, sorry, I keep calling them assault intercessors. When are we getting Primaris assault intercessors? Assault squads, 2 assault squads. They're both made more durable by the Sanguinary Priest. One's buffed with Dante, one's buffed with the Captain. So of those 20 wounds you have to get through for the assault squad, they've got 5 up feeling no pain across the board. AP is down a bit. And the one thing that I noticed, like I trying to run Vanguard Vets a couple of weeks ago, and I was thinking, do I need to run 10 Vanguard Vets again? But the thing about Vanguard Vets is, like, the second you hit them on -1 AP, there's, you know, Storm Shields, or maybe they're called Astarte Shields now in Van Vets, they don't give +1 to your normal save anymore. So the second you hit the Van Vets on -1 AP, you're on a 4 up. Now, a lot of things have low AP, so in some ways, maybe maybe you're paying points for Storm Shields that aren't actually that worth it. And the Assault Squad has better melee options, right? Because the Vanguard Veterans, everyone's stuck with an heirloom weapon. The Assault Squad, you get some guy, like the Sergeant, you know, he can take a Thunderhammer, you can get a couple of Eviscerators in there. So maybe that's just, and then you do mortal wounds. When you charge every model in engagement range, 4 ups a mortal wound, you don't worry about the enemy strength anymore. That was what it used to be. You used to have to roll above their strength. You don't do that now. It's just a 50-50 for every model in engagement range to take a mortal wound. So if I was going to charge a big knight and I can get 10 guys into engagement range, that's just 50% chance. Just take 5 mortal wounds off before the combat starts. Now that's really good. Well, it would actually be 12 guys if I can get everyone in range, because I've got a Captain and I've got Dante in there as well, right? Or sorry, the Sanguinary Priest and Dante. Lamartis is bringing the -1 damage to the big squad of Death Company. I need to try this. I haven't tried this yet. I've been saying to myself, Infernal Pistols plus Power Fists are the best way to run the Death Company now. I'll run that this week with Lamartis. Desolation Marines are too good to not include at the moment. Disclaimer, they're 240 points when I'm filming this video. They may have gone up, or indirect fire may have been nerfed on Friday. I'll leave something in the comments if this has changed before. But I'm filming a video on Wednesday night, I'm filming a video on Thursday night. This is the only night I can put out this video. I do kind of think Desolation Marines might be a little bit too powerful, and I do think Devastating Wounds might be a bit too powerful. So we'll see where they land. There is other combos out with the Desolation Marines you can do in the Space Marine book that are really good. One of the ones I ran last week was the Thunderfire. No, not the Thunderfire. The Thunderstrike, giving all my range shooting +1. So there is things you can do to make your shooting really good, and we'll cover that in a future video, okay? Eradicators are a potential anti-armor monster solution, even though they only have strength 9 guns now. And that's because Eradicators, if you shoot everything at the same target, they have a special rule, well, they had it last edition as well, called Total Obliteration, and Total Obliteration will mean that against vehicles or monsters, you can reroll hits, wounds, and the damage roll. So arguably, Eradicators get like their own oath of moment against whatever target they want if it's a vehicle monster. So if you do only wound on 5s, but you have a full reroll to wound, you still wound 55% of the time. Now, I'm not sure I love 3 Eradicators, especially with no multi-meltas, but I think 6 with 2 multi-meltas could actually be pretty good, because that would be maybe like 12 would it be 12 melta shots? No, it would be 8. But 8 melta shots, full hits to reroll, full hits to wound, full hits to damage, or full rerolls to all those dice rolls. So I think Eradicators probably do have a place. I'll make a video on Eradicators real soon as well. With the 3 big units, you would think the additional attack from the Sons of Sanguinius would help, and the additional strength. if you actually break this list down, this list is a more combat orientated list, right, than a shooting list, right? It really just has, like, I guess 300 points of shooting. I guess you could class the Ball Predator shooting, but it doesn't really get any bonus from Gladiatus. So this list only has 300 points of shooting. This is a much more close combat orientated list, but Gladiatus is the preferred pick, and I think that's just the doctrines. I think like fallback and charge, army wide, or used with adaptive strategy on an individual unit, or advance and charge, army wide, or used in an individual unit is actually really, really good. I talked a lot in the last edition how the speed of the Blood Angels is our best. It's our best weapon. It's what we can get the most out of. And Gladiatus gives us army-wide advance and charge, or individual unit advance and charge. And you don't do any damage if you don't make that charge roll. You know, like if you have a 9-inch charge and you don't make it, you don't do any damage. If you've got to roll a d6 first and you average a 3, then you have a 6-inch charge and make the charge, you do damage. So, like, what's the why? It's very, on my community poll, it was very split. Like, people think it's 50-50. People think Sons of Sanguinius is just as good as Gladiatus. At the moment, I'm feeling unconvinced, and I think it's the Gladiatus task force that is stronger. But let's see what detachment wins the first tournament for Blood Angels. This week, Gladiatus did best by a long shot. The Ball Predator is going to do some serious work into infantry heavy lists now. It's almost worth just throwing it in, and if you come up against a list that's not great against at a tournament or something, so be it. You know, you can't always have the optimal units in every situation. I like the Ball Predator. I think it's a fun unit. I'm glad to see it's got some value in the tabletop. I was asking all the way through 9th edition, could it please get its weapons made assault if it advanced? They did that for infantry. It wouldn't have mattered. Like, if they'd made it like if it advances, it can shoot its flamers at like knights or armor. It wouldn't really matter because it would have done chip damage to those things at best. But hey, at least we get it against infantry. I guess if you come up against like swarms or beasts, that's a little bit annoying. It doesn't make total sense. Like flamers, you would think would be really good against swarms. Oh well, at least we got it against infantry. There's 670 points in this of characters. I've said this is madness. I mean, I guess I'm going to try something with a shed load of characters in the near future. It's worth noting that, like, all those characters, it was 4 10-man squads. I think that's the takeaway for this. So it's 4 10-man squads, and all those characters are buffing the 10-man squads, right? There's no character attached to less than a 10-man squad. So maybe that's a better takeaway than just flat out saying it's 670 points of characters. I want to say this list is possibly carried a little bit by those Bolter Discipline Desolation Marines. You could pay 1 CP every turn to put them Devastator Doctor in. You could burst on 5s and 6s. It's a crazy amount of indirect from the Castellan launchers. It's 9 crack missiles. You can revive a guy every turn. The Desolator Marines are really good. So there could have been a little bit of a carry from them. Maybe when they go away, it might change to more people running Sons of Sanguinius. I guess we'll see. I think there is other really good combos in the Space Marine list, and I've got one that I'm going to probably try and film a video on next week. I think the Doctrines are really flexible in Gladiatus. I found the ability to advance and charge when I needed it really handy. I think it would have been like too risky a charge that I just wouldn't have gone for, but because I was able to advance, you know, you can roll your advance roll before you move the models. So I go like, all right, I'm going to pay 1 CP to do an advance and charge on this. I rolled a 1, I'm just going to sit behind the train. I rolled a 6, hell yeah, I'm going to move 18 inches and charge you, you know? So yeah, fall back and charge whenever you need it as well. Blood Angels have that as well though, right? Blood Angels have a strat. I think it's now called Relentless Assault. Relentless Assault is a strange name for it because it's like, it doesn't make me think of what it is. But yeah, you can fall back and be eligible to declare the charge. So Blood Angels can fall back and charge. We just can't get advance and charge in this detachment, which I think I would have really liked. Okay. Infernal Pistols and Power Fist Death Company seem to be the best way to go. I've been saying this for a little while, especially with basically fallback, shoot, and charge. And then, you know, when you fall back out of combat, then you could shoot them with your incursors, get +1 to hit, shoot all those Infernal Pistols. That's going to be a lot of Infernal Pistols, lethal hits as well on 6s. And then both your 10-man squad of Assault Marines are going to get they're going to get basically protection against mortal wounds, from the priests, so a 5 up against mortals. They're also going to get a 5 up against everything else. So it's like your 3 10-man jump units. One of them's got 6 up, feel no pain. The other 2 have 5 up, feel no pain. It's pretty cool. Notable things, I suppose, is there's no Sanguinary Guard in this list. That makes me sad, because Sanguinary Guard... I could show you a drawer just full of like 25 Sanguinary Guard. I finally got to 25 last edition, and now we don't want to run any of them because they are... I don't know. If I had to guess how many points they're overcosted, if the Assault Squad... What was the Assault Squad? Like 230 for 10? And Sanguinary Guard are 215 for 5? I get that they're 2 damage. I get that they're -1 to hit. I think that's the problem with Sanguinary Guard, actually. Like, if we really want to break it down, I think Games Workshop can't balance the Sanguinary Guard, because what they've tried to do is they've tried to make them really good and survivable in melee, but by doing that, they're still, you know, they're still a 2-wound Marine with no invulnerable save at ranged, and people just pick them off at range. So at that point, it literally comes down to the cover on the table. And the cover is vastly different. Like, if you look at cover that we've played in tournaments in the UK versus cover that gets played in tournaments in the US, there's a lot of debate about that. I don't want to really say any of the two is better, but I do think that the cover in the US maybe is a little bit denser. And some of the... Yes, you know, in smaller tournaments, sometimes, yes, the cover can go either way. Like, you could have a really dense tournament, or you could have a really light tournament. But, I saw a couple of like top streams, especially I think like the one that Jack won, the LVO. Like the cover at LVO was like quite dense, and I remember I tried to play one of those on my stream. Like I said to Andrew, like we usually play like the UKTC terrain. I wanted to play a game on WTC, which is some of the terrain that you use in America, I believe. And after the game, Andrew complained at me. He was like, "Oh, that terrain was too dense." So I was like, see, that's the problem with Sanguinary Guard, is like, they're so terrain reliant. Like, they basically need to be where they can't be shot, because if they get shot, they just die really fast, because they're 2-wound Marines. But what Games Workshop have done is they made them like really tanky and melee attached to the Warlord, -1 to hit, -1 to wound, but it doesn't matter, because people aren't going to fight them in melee. People just fall back from them and shoot them. You can't cut down now. There's no like cut them down strategy. So anyone in any game that's in engagement range with Sanguinary Guard are just going to be like, yeah, F this, I'm going to fall back from the Sanguinary Guard and I'll shoot them off the table. That's what I would do 100% of the time if I played Sanguinary Guard. So then it comes down to terrain, and terrain's so random tournament to tournament, and like I said, different maps, different terrains, some are dense, some are quiet. So I think Games Workshop have put Sanguinary Guard in almost an impossible position to balance. I can tell you right now that, like, last edition, when they went up to 32 points per model, everyone, like, slashed how many they were running, right? At 32 points per model. They're currently 43, which is insane. And they left them at 32 for, like, 6 or 9 months. It was a while, and then they brought them back down to 30. And at 30, everybody jumped up and ran a lot of them again, probably. And then I guess they got free War Gear and Arcs of Omen. And I think before Arcs of Omen, I guess they had Armour of Contempt, which made them really, really good. But it was like, they've struggled to get Sanguinary Guard right. I could tell you that 43 points per model is criminally high. And I feel like you can run 5 of them. I'm going to wait. I'm not going to do any video on Sanguinary Guard until they figure it out. They've not figured it out. You can run 5 of them at 43. I really don't think you can run any more, because it's too easy for, like, unless you're on that perfect table with loads of terrain, which probably, like I said, probably only happens at some of the biggest events, and I don't even know if that happened where I play in my local meta at local tournaments, because at the moment I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I don't really travel. Like, if I have to travel more than, like, let's say, like 2 hours to go to a tournament, I'm probably not going. If I have to stay overnight at the moment, I'm probably not going. So I'm going to smaller local events. And smaller local events, doesn't matter where you are, anywhere in the world, you're not going to have amazing terrain on those smaller local events. You'll have okay terrain. Some events will have good terrain, like reasonably good. They're not going to be crazy dense. They're not going to have loads of obscuring like you maybe need to make Sanguinary Guard viable. So this list has no Sanguinary Guard. I think this is the right call by Jordan. I don't think we can... I think it's... Maybe that's why I've been losing games, because I think I've fielded Sanguinary Guard in every game. Maybe I just need to get over it and be like, right, I can't field Sanguinary Guard. They're too expensive. We don't play on the super densest map. We usually play on maps with windows, so they're always going to get shot or sniped on, and at 43 points per model, that's just not viable. I was going to say, not when Assault Marine is 23 points per model, and he can get a 5-up Feel No Pain. It's funny that they didn't allow the Sanguinary Priest to attach the Sanguinary Guard. They must have been worried that that was probably too strong. But too strong at 43 points per model? I don't think... Nah. Alright, ran over. Let's move on. Yeah, the last thing to say about this list is 7 units in this list, which is not that many. Assuming they attach as I predicted, I think they have to attach as I predicted. I don't think there's any other option. So 7 units feels really low, and I guess I'm going to try and run a list that has 7 units. See how I get on. Spoiler, I might have already run it on Wednesday night against Knights that came out 2 days before this video, and I probably got slaughtered. But hey, I tried it. I'll try some other lists. What else have I got to say? So normally when I get a list at this point, I would run through like 6 or 7 key criteria and try and score it and say like how good I think this list is out of 50. Well, I've put question marks out of 50 because I've got no idea, because I haven't won a game of 10th edition. If I'm sitting here in the future and have won a game against 10th edition against Miles, then my Hail Mary against Miles has worked, because I'm planning on running a Terminator Captain and 10 Chainfist Terminators against Miles Knights, and I think I'm just going to throw them... I think I'm going to try and Rapid Ingress, and if I don't Rapid Ingress, I'm going to go for that 9-inch rerollable charge, which we all know is a shitty chance. It's like 48%. So I'm trying to Hail Mary to beat the Knights. So I might have one win, but the chances are pretty slim. Anyway, so I'm not scoring out of 50. I'm just going to tell you my thoughts. I thought maybe it's a fun thing we could do this week is you guys could put your score for this list out of 50 in the comments if you want to engage with the channel. Remember, every like or every comment is super appreciated. So this list could struggle to hold primary objectives due to lack of units. I guess the Desolation Marines might help because they could sit on the objective, do their indirect thing, but there's no real way to screen the enemy here. There's no infiltrators, there's nothing like that. So if you fought demons, they could be right in on top of your Desolation Marines. That's what happened to me last week, and that's how I lost all my Desolation Marines to the Flamers, wasn't it? Anti-infantry. So infantry isn't going to pose too much problems against this list. You've got tons of chainswords, you've got Castellan launchers, worst case Death Company. Everything in this list can kill infantry. No problems there. Anti-vehicle monsters. So we might struggle against toughness 10 targets. Honor the Chapter Granting Lance, which is going to help those melee units. So Lamartez and his unit could go after those toughness 10 plus targets. Maybe with full Oath of Moment, one of those chainsaw units could go after one of those toughness 10 targets as well, using the Hammer of Wrath special rule, right? And that's one thing that I forgot to say is, like, when we were talking about the cheaper chaplain that could have attached instead of Lamartez, the cheaper chaplain also lets you do mortal wounds every time you fight as well. So cheaper chaplain can help a little bit with mortal wound output, but I do understand why you would take Lamartez. Lethal hits and -1 damage could actually be really big. There's a lot of times when Death Company do get killed by 2 damage weaponry. So in that case, having twice as many Death Company survive because they're -1 damage could actually be pretty huge. Yeah, I'm not personally convinced that this has enough to deal with like a Knight army, but the Death Company and Desolation Marines might help, and obviously Honor of the Chapter to get the Lance might help. I guess we might see some changes to Knights this week as well in the data slate, so we'll see. Mobility, Gladiatus is arguably more mobile than Sons of Sanguinius, and I've been saying basically on this channel for like 3 years, our most important trait of Blood Angels is the speed, right? So 30 jump Marines, all with the ability to advance and charge. That is the speed, and that's probably one of the overall scoring reasons that this... Because a 10-man jump unit with a captain and a Sanguinary Priest attached, with the AP we talked about, if you can get a lot of consistent wounds in, you're probably able to kill the whole unit and then move next turn up to 18 inches and get onto another. So maybe you don't need that many units if you've got these big death balls of Marines that are survivable, or as survivable and killy as we can be. For specialization, previously I have penalized people for like having their list too character focused and also not having units that can perform secondaries. I'm struggling with this list a little bit to see how it could do well into some of those armies, but I mean the list went 4-1, it did fine, it performed well, and it's the highest Blood Angels list that we saw worldwide this weekend, so I mean, I don't see any way of, like, I'm not taking any points off of it. I don't think there's anything it potentially could have done better. I suppose, like, the one thing I keep falling back is on, like, I like the Death Company Dread, I like the Librarian Dreadnought. I think they're both really cool units. I do wonder if they're overcosted at like 185, 195 points each, though. And I think that might be what other people are thinking as well. Maybe that's why I'm losing as well, because I've seen these Dreadnoughts and I think they're cool, but their points costs are not that competitive. If you've got an Ironclad Dreadnought at 150, I don't really see why the Death Company Dreadnought needs to be 195. It's funny that, because I do own an Ironclad. Maybe I should just run the Ironclad. These videos help me as much as they help you guys. Alright, so big shout out to Jordan. While several of us, myself included, haven't managed to figure out anything, here he is winning games, representing. Well done, Jordan. I did reach out on my community group to see if you were part of it, so we could have picked your brain, but I guess you're not. If you're watching this video, please join us, and then maybe we can talk in the future. So yeah, normally I'd score this list out of 50. Going over the various categories, giving like 10 points per category. As I'm still struggling to win my first 10th edition game, I'm going to let you guys score it up in the comments. So the last thing to say is please do like this video if you got any value out of it. Subscribe if you want to see more Blood Angels content every week. And then consider supporting us by clicking the join button under this video or clicking on the Patreon link. Channel members via Patreon and the join button. That's the best way you can support the channel. I really do appreciate everyone that helps it out and also helps me get more content out. So thank you to the channel members as always. I will catch you guys in the next video. There's loads more to come in 10th edition. Please catch us on some of the live streams. By the blood are we made strong, my friends. Peace.